No one wanted the isolated house at the mine, but what the single mother found there. Sarah Mitchell held her 8-year-old son's hand tightly as they walked down the dirt road leading to the house that nobody wanted. The dry wind of the Nevada desert kicked up dust around them, and the weight of the decision she had made felt as heavy as the 2 suitcases she carried. It was then that she saw the exposed brick structure rising solitary in the middle of the arid valley. The house seemed solid, but there was something melancholy about how it stood out against the rocky slopes of the old mining site. Mrs. Catherine, the 62-year-old businesswoman who offered the place, had been clear. "Nobody wants to live there, dear. You can stay as long as you need without paying a cent." "Mom, why is the house all alone like this?" asked Tyler, her son, adjusting the school backpack he carried. "Because sometimes things stay empty for a while, sweetie, but now we're going to give it new life," replied Sarah, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The 2-room apartment in downtown Silver City had been lost after Tyler's father stopped paying child support, and she lost her job at the fabric store. 3 months of overdue rent were enough for the eviction. Mrs. Catherine's offer came at the exact moment when Sarah no longer knew where to turn. The dirt road stretched for almost 5 kilometers from the nearest town, winding between hills that still bore the scars of mineral extraction. Every so often, piles of stones and rusted structures were reminders that this region was once prosperous, bustling with trucks and workers. "She said I can start working at the town bakery on Monday," Sarah commented, more to herself than to her son. "It's just until I save up enough for us to go back to Silver City." Tyler nodded, but his eyes shone with curiosity as he observed the wide land around the house. For a child used to the cramped space of the apartment, that vastness seemed like an adventure waiting to happen. When they reached the front door, Sarah noticed the key was exactly where Mrs. Catherine said it would be, under the cracked pot on the porch. The ease of access made her slightly uncomfortable. If the key was left there, anyone could enter the house whenever they wanted. The interior revealed spacious rooms with simple but functional furniture. The living room had a faded fabric sofa, a wooden table, and empty shelves. The kitchen, though old, had a stove, refrigerator, and all the basic utensils needed. 2 bedrooms completed the house, a larger one for Sarah and a smaller one, perfect for Tyler. "Mom, look!" Tyler ran to the back window. "There's a swing outside." Sarah approached and saw a wooden structure with worn ropes hanging from a tree near the house. The swing swayed gently in the wind, as if it had been waiting for someone for a long time. "It must have been from some child who lived here before," she said, noticing her son was already imagining playing in that space. While they organized the few clothes they had, Sarah examined every corner of the house carefully. Everything was clean, as if someone had prepared it especially for their arrival. In the kitchen drawers, she found some forgotten utensils. In the closet of the larger bedroom, some women's clothes hung on hangers. "Why would someone leave these things here?" she murmured, touching a floral dress that seemed to be of good quality. The question went unanswered when she heard Tyler shout with excitement in the backyard. She ran to see what had happened and found the boy kneeling near the swing, digging in the dirt with his hands. "I found some little toys buried." He showed a dirty plastic doll and a rusty metal car. Sarah felt a tightness in her chest. Those toys confirmed that other children had played there. But where were they now? Why was the house abandoned so abruptly that even the toys were left behind? "Tyler, don't touch things that aren't ours," she asked, though she knew her son's curiosity was natural. "But Mom, if they're buried here, it's because someone didn't want them anymore. Can I play?" The child's logic made sense, but Sarah felt uncomfortable with the idea of Tyler using toys from unknown children. There was something about that situation she couldn't explain, a feeling that they were occupying a space that belonged to other people. As the afternoon progressed, she began to notice details Mrs. Catherine hadn't mentioned. Footprints in the dirt around the house suggested someone had been there recently. A pile of chopped firewood was neatly stacked near the back door, and the ashes in the living room fireplace seemed fresh. Could it be that someone comes here sometimes? She wondered aloud. When the sun began to set, tinting the sky orange and red, Sarah and Tyler were sitting on the porch, sharing a sandwich she had prepared. The silence of the area contrasted drastically with the constant bustle of the city. "Mum, do you think we'll like living here?" Tyler asked, swinging his legs on the porch swing. "I think everything will work out, sweetheart. Sometimes we need to accept different places until we find our permanent spot." But as she spoke, Sarah watched the shadows forming between the hills around them. There was movement there, as if someone was walking among the rocks. She blinked several times, trying to see better, but the distance and the evening light made it hard to be sure. "Tyler, let's go inside. It's getting cold," she suggested, though what really bothered her was the feeling of being watched. Inside the house, she turned on all the available lights. The electricity worked perfectly, another sign that someone was maintaining the property in usable condition. Mrs. Catherine had said the house had been empty for over a year, but the evidence suggested more recent occupancy. That first night, Sarah had trouble sleeping. It wasn't noises that bothered her, but precisely the absolute silence. Accustomed to the constant sound of cars, conversations, and urban life, the complete quiet of the area kept her in a constant state of alert. Around 2 in the morning, she heard the sound of footsteps on the porch. She got up slowly and went to the bedroom window, trying to see through the curtains. A figure was walking slowly around the house, carrying what looked like a flashlight. Sarah's heart raced. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The figure stopped near the kitchen window and remained there for a few minutes. Sarah held her breath, trying not to make any noise that might alert the presence outside. After what seemed like an eternity, the footsteps moved away and silence returned. The next morning, Tyler woke up excited to explore the surroundings of the house. Sarah, still shaken by the events of the previous night, decided it would be prudent to get to know the neighborhood and better understand where they had settled. "Let's take a walk, Tyler. I want to see if there's anyone nearby we can talk to," she said, packing a small backpack with water and cookies. The walk around the area revealed a landscape marked by past mining activity. Abandoned concrete structures were scattered across the hills, and trails snaked between piles of tailings covered in scrub vegetation. About 3 kilometers from the house, they found a small community of about 15 homes. The buildings were simple, most with exposed brick walls and asbestos roofs, clothes dried on makeshift lines, and a few children played on the dirt road that cut through the small cluster of homes. When they saw Sarah and Tyler approaching, some people stopped their activities to observe the new faces. "Good morning," greeted Sarah, addressing a middle-aged woman watering plants in front of her house. "Good morning. Are you the new residents of the supervisor's house?" asked the woman, evident curiosity in her voice. "The supervisor's house?" Sarah repeated, confused. "We just moved into a house up there, in a somewhat isolated area." "That's the one. We call it that because it's where the mining company supervisor lived before it shut down," explained the woman, drying her hands on her apron. "My name is Dorothy. Are you related to Mrs. Catherine?" "No. She just offered the house for us to stay in temporarily." "I'm Sarah, and this is my son Tyler," she replied, feeling relieved to find people willing to talk. Dorothy invited them in for coffee, and soon other neighbors joined the conversation. Sarah discovered the small community was made up of families of former mining company employees who, after the company closed, decided to stay in the region due to a lack of alternatives. "The mine closed almost 15 years ago," shared an elderly woman named Margaret, with graying hair and hands marked by work. "Most families left, but those of us who had nowhere else to go stayed here. The land is ours, even if it's worth almost nothing." "And the house we're living in?" asked Sarah. "How long has it been empty?" The women exchanged glances before Dorothy answered. "The supervisor's family disappeared one night, well before the mine officially closed. We woke up and they were gone. They left everything behind." "Disappeared how?" Sarah felt a chill down her spine. "No one really knows." Robert, who was the supervisor, had discovered some irregularities in the company. He was very nervous, said he was going to report some schemes. One morning, the house was empty. Cars, clothes, everything was left behind, explained Margaret, lowering her voice as if telling a secret. Tyler, who was playing with other children in the backyard, seemed oblivious to the serious conversation happening in Dorothy's kitchen. Sarah watched her son through the window while processing the information she was receiving. "And after that, no one else lived there?" she asked. "Mrs. Catherine showed up a few years later, saying she had bought the property. She comes here from time to time, but never brought anyone to live there." "You are the first people," said Dorothy. "We saw someone walking around the house at night," confessed Sarah, feeling she could trust these women. The neighbors didn't seem surprised. "Oh, that does happen. Mr. Harold, who lives in the greenhouse over there, sometimes checks on the property. He was a very good friend of Robert's," explained Margaret. "He might come talk to you, if you'd like. He knows a lot about the history of the area," suggested Dorothy. Sarah accepted the offer, feeling that understanding the history of the place better might explain the strange feeling she'd had since arriving. Tyler reluctantly said goodbye to his new friends, promising to return the next day to play. On the walk back home they moved more slowly, observing the details of the landscape more closely. Tyler found more toys buried in different spots on the property, always near trees or natural structures that could serve as landmarks. "Mom, I think the kids who lived here played treasure hunt," commented Tyler, showing a plastic truck he had unearthed near a wire fence. Her son's observation made Sarah stop and reflect. The toys didn't seem to have been lost or discarded randomly. There was a pattern to how they were distributed, as if they had been buried on purpose. "You might be right, honey. Let's keep these things and see if we can figure out what they mean," she said, beginning to get interested in the mystery that was presenting itself. Back at the house, Sarah organized the found toys on the kitchen table. There were dolls, toy cars, Lego pieces, and some objects she couldn't identify. Tyler dedicated himself to cleaning each item, treating them like real archaeological treasures. "Mom, look at this!" Tyler showed a doll whose clothing had a small pocket. Inside the pocket, they found a folded piece of paper, protected by plastic. Sarah carefully opened the paper and found a message written in a child's handwriting. "To whoever finds this, the toys mark Daddy's special places. Emily, 7 years old." Sarah's heart raced. The message suggested the girl had intentionally left clues, perhaps hoping someone would find them one day. The Daddy's special places could be related to the supervisor's work or discoveries he had made. "Tyler, I think we found a very important clue," she said, showing the paper to her son. "What kind of clue, Mum?" "I don't know yet, but I think the girl who lived here before left this for someone to find. Maybe she knew something important that her father had discovered." They spent the rest of the afternoon mapping the locations where they had found each toy, using paper and pencil to create a simple drawing of the property. Sarah noticed the points formed an irregular line starting from the house and heading toward the abandoned structures of the mining company. When dusk arrived, an old pickup truck parked in front of the house. A man of about 50, with dark hair and broad shoulders, got out of the vehicle and walked to the porch. Sarah and Tyler went out to greet him. "Good afternoon. I'm Harold, your neighbor. Dorothy said you wanted to talk to me," said the man with a deep but friendly voice. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harold. I'm Sarah, and this is my son, Tyler. Please, come in," invited Sarah, feeling safer knowing the man she had seen the previous night had a known identity. Harold examined the house with the eyes of someone who knew every detail. His calloused hands touched the furniture with familiarity, and he nodded when he saw that Sarah had kept everything organized. "Haven't been in here for a long time," he commented, sitting in the armchair he had clearly occupied before. "Robert was like a brother to me. We worked together at the mining company for over 15 years. "The neighbors said he disappeared with his family," said Sarah, serving coffee to the visitor. "He didn't disappear, girl. They ran away. Robert discovered the mining company was doing wrong things, taking more from the land than they declared. And when he tried to report it, he received threats," explained Harold, stirring the sugar in his coffee with slow movements. "What kind of threats?" "They said they would harm his family if he opened his mouth. Robert wasn't one to be easily intimidated. But when it involved his wife and children, he decided it was better to disappear." Tyler was playing in the backyard, but Sarah noticed he was paying attention to the conversation through the open window. The boy had stopped playing with the toys and was obviously interested in the story. "And do you think they're okay?" asked Sarah. "I know they are. Robert sent me a message a few years later through an acquaintance. Said he was living in another state under a different name, but that the family was all right. Then why do you keep coming here? Harold sighed deeply before answering, because Robert left me with a responsibility. He knew important things about the mining company that could help the families in the region if they ever came to light. He asked me to keep those secrets until the right moment. And what would be the right moment? When someone appeared who wasn't afraid to face the truth, said Harold, looking directly at Sarah. Someone like you who agreed to live in a house nobody wanted. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of a car approaching. Through the window, Sarah saw Mrs. Catherine's elegant vehicle parking behind Harold's pickup. The businesswoman got out of the car with a surprised expression upon seeing the other vehicle. "Good afternoon," said Mrs. Catherine, climbing the porch steps. "I came to see how you're settling in." Harold stood up to greet her, but Sarah noticed tension in the air between the two. Catherine examined the interior of the house as if looking for something specific, her eyes stopping on the toys neatly arranged on the table. "I see you found some mementos from the previous family," commented Catherine, touching one of the dolls with excessive care. "They're Tyler's. He likes playing with old things," lied Sarah, following a protective instinct she couldn't explain. Of course. Children love mysteries," said Catherine, but her tone suggested she didn't completely believe the explanation. Harold said goodbye quickly after Catherine's arrival, promising to return another day to continue the conversation. Sarah noticed he avoided any mention of the matters they had discussed, limiting himself to polite comments about the weather and the condition of the house. After Harold left, Catherine stayed a few more minutes, asking questions about how they were adapting to the area and if they needed anything. Sarah answered politely, but remained cautious. There was something about the way the woman observed every detail that made her uncomfortable. "If you need anything, you can call me," said Catherine, handing over a card with her phone number. "This house means a lot to me. I want you to feel at home." After Catherine left, Tyler ran into the house. "Mom, I heard everything Mr. Harold said," he said excitedly. "We're in a real mystery house." "Tyler, these are adult matters. You need to be careful about what you say to other people, especially to Mrs. Catherine," instructed Sarah, beginning to understand there was more complexity to the situation than she had initially imagined. "But Mom, I think I know where the secret Mr. Harold talked about is." "What do you mean?" "The toys that Emily buried. They show where her dad hid the important things, and I think I know where it is." Tyler ran to the makeshift map they had made and pointed to the spot where the line formed by the toy locations ended. "It's right here, see? At the old construction site way out there. I saw it when we were walking today," said the boy, with the typical excitement of someone who just solved a puzzle. Sarah looked at the drawing and had to admit her son's logic made sense. If Emily really had left clues about her dad's special places, and if those places were related to the secrets Robert discovered, then the abandoned mining company structure would be a logical hiding place. "Tomorrow we'll go take a look there, but very carefully," decided Sarah. "And we can't tell anyone about this, at least not yet." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep again, but this time for different reasons. Her mind worked connecting the information she had received: the disappearance of the supervisor's family, the irregularities at the mining company, Mrs. Catherine's specific interest in the toys, and the possibility that they were living at the center of a 15-year-old mystery. Around 3 in the morning, she heard the footsteps on the porch again. This time, instead of hiding, she went to the front door and opened it slowly. Harold was there, carrying a flashlight. "Sorry for the scare," he whispered. "I usually come in the early hours so no one sees me. Some folks don't like my presence around here." "Come in," invited Sarah, lowering her voice so as not to wake Tyler. "I was having trouble sleeping anyway." In the kitchen, illuminated only by the yellow light over the sink, Harold told Sarah details he hadn't mentioned in the presence of Tyler and Catherine. Robert discovered that the mining company was extracting materials far more valuable than they officially declared. They found a vein of rare minerals, but hid it to avoid paying the proper taxes and royalties, explained Harold. "And where is this documented?" Robert made copies of everything before he fled. Documents, photos, samples of the materials. He hid it all somewhere safe and told me that one day, when it was safe, I could use this evidence to get fair compensation for our community. Does Mrs. Catherine know about this? She's the daughter of the mine owner. She inherited the property when her father lost the licenses and had to shut down the company. I'm sure she knows about the hidden materials and has been searching for them for years. Sarah felt a chill. Catherine's apparent generosity in offering the house for free was starting to make sense. She needed someone living on the property to have legitimate access and continue her search. "Do you think she offered us the house for that reason?" asked Sarah. "I'm sure of it. She's brought other people here before, always with different stories, but they never stayed long. You're the first who seems genuinely interested in understanding what happened." "And do you think it's dangerous for us?" "Not dangerous in a way that they'd hurt you," replied Harold, thoughtful. "But if she finds out you've discovered any clues, she might try to force you out. That's why I come to check if everything's okay." Sarah thanked him for his concern and promised to be careful. Harold said goodbye, but before leaving he offered one last piece of advice. "If you find anything important, come talk to me before you make any move. This game is more complicated than it seems." The next morning, Tyler woke up even more excited about the mission to explore the abandoned structure. Sarah packed a backpack with water, crackers, and a flashlight, determined to find out if her son's suspicions had any basis. The walk to the old building took about 20 minutes over uneven terrain. The structure was an old mining company workshop, with concrete walls and a partially collapsed roof. Vegetation grew through the cracks, and the place had the gloomy look of complete abandonment. "Are you sure it's here?" asked Sarah, examining the surroundings. "The toy map points to this spot," insisted Tyler, consulting the paper he had brought. "Emily must have come here with her father." They explored the outside area first, looking for signs of recent activity or points of access to the structure. Tyler found a side door that was ajar, protected only by a board nailed in a seemingly makeshift way. "Mom, look! Someone's already been in here." He pointed to footprints in the dirt near the door. The footprints were recent, possibly from the day before. Sarah felt her resolve waver. If someone was frequenting the place, it might not be safe to enter with Tyler. "I think we'd better go back and talk to Mr. Harold first," she suggested. "But, Mom, we came all this way. At least let's take a quick look inside," insisted Tyler, already pushing the board aside. Against her better judgment, Sarah followed her son into the interior of the structure. The space was brighter than she expected, thanks to holes in the roof that allowed natural light to enter. The floor was covered with debris and rusted tools, abandoned by the mining company. Tyler ran ahead, examining every corner with the excitement of an explorer. Sarah followed more cautiously, paying attention to any sign of structural danger or the presence of other people. "Mum, there's a ladder here going down," shouted Tyler from somewhere in the back of the structure. Sarah ran to him and found an opening in the floor with a metal ladder, descending into what looked like a basement or underground structure. The opening was partially covered by a metal sheet that had been moved recently. "Tyler, don't go down there," she ordered, grabbing her son's arm. "But the flashlight shows there's a room down there, and there's a light on." Sarah looked down and confirmed there was artificial lighting coming from below ground. Someone was using that space regularly. Her maternal instinct screamed for them to leave immediately, but her curiosity about the mysteries they had uncovered was too strong. "We'll go down, but very slowly and very quietly," she decided. "If we hear anything strange, we run back up." The ladder led to a corridor lit by lamps connected to a small generator. The air was damp and smelled of earth, but it was surprisingly clean for an abandoned environment. They walked down the corridor until they reached a larger room. What they found there made Sarah stop breathing for a few seconds. The room was organized like an improvised office, with tables covered in documents, maps of the region pinned to the walls, and labeled boxes stacked on metal shelves. It was clearly a place where someone worked regularly. "Mom, look at all these papers," whispered Tyler, approaching one of the tables. Sarah examined the nearest documents and recognized blueprints of the mining company, extraction reports, and photographs of mineral samples. There were also official correspondences between the company and government agencies, some of them marked with red pen highlights. In one of the boxes, she found notebooks with detailed handwritten notes. The handwriting was male and organized, recording discrepancies between the company's official reports and the actual volumes of extracted material. The dates on the notes went up to a few weeks before the supervisor's family disappeared. "Tyler, I think we found what Robert hid," murmured Sarah, flipping through one of the notebooks. "Is it the treasure Emily talked about?" "It's not gold or jewels, honey, but it might be worth more than that. It's proof that the mining company was doing wrong things." They spent a few minutes examining the material, trying to understand the extent of the documentation. There was evidence that the company had extracted rare minerals in quantities far greater than declared, evading millions in taxes and royalties that should have been paid to the local community. The sound of footsteps in the corridor made Sarah take Tyler's hand and look for a place to hide. They crouched behind a stack of boxes, trying to control their breathing as they heard someone coming down the ladder. "I knew you'd end up coming here," said a familiar voice. Sarah recognized Harold's voice and came out of hiding with relief. "Mr. Harold, you scared us," she said, still breathless. "Sorry, but when I saw you weren't home, I figured you had decided to follow the clues from the toys," explained Harold, smiling at Tyler. "The boy is really smart." "Did you know this place existed?" asked Sarah. "Of course. I helped Robert organize everything here. This was the mining company's storage area, but they abandoned it when they moved operations to another sector. Robert realized it would be the perfect place to hide the evidence." Harold explained that he had maintained the site all these years, visiting regularly to preserve the documents and wait for the right moment to use them. The arrival of Sarah and Tyler had created the opportunity he had been waiting for so long. "You have no ties to the company or the people involved. That makes you neutral witnesses if we decide to present this evidence to the authorities," said Harold. "But present it to whom?" asked Sarah. "The mining company closed years ago." "The company closed, but the people responsible are still alive, and there is a legal deadline to seek compensation for the damages caused to the community. If we can prove they hid the true extent of the extraction, we can demand reparations." Tyler was fascinated by the explanation, but Sarah felt the weight of the responsibility being placed on her shoulders. Getting involved in this situation would mean confronting Catherine and possibly other powerful people. "What if Mrs. Catherine finds out we know about this?" she asked. "That's why we need to be careful. She must not suspect we found the evidence. At least, not until we're ready to act," replied Harold. They agreed that Sarah and Tyler would continue living normally in the house, while Harold would discreetly begin contacting lawyers specialized in environmental law and mining compensation. The plan was to build a solid case before revealing the existence of the documents. "In the meantime, you can keep playing archaeology," suggested Harold, winking at Tyler. "But be careful not to give away that you already know everything." On the way back home, Sarah felt torn between the excitement of the discovery and the anxiety about the consequences of getting involved in the conflict. Tyler, on the other hand, was beaming with the feeling of being part of an important mission. "Mom, we're going to help all the people in the community, right?" asked the boy. "We'll try, sweetheart, but it has to be done the right way, without putting ourselves in danger." When they arrived home, Catherine was waiting on the porch, once again appearing without warning. Sarah tried to keep a neutral expression, but she felt her heart race upon seeing the businesswoman. "Hi, Catherine. We were just taking a little walk around the area," said Sarah, forcing a natural smile. "That's good. I hope you're enjoying exploring." "This area has a lot of interesting history," replied Catherine, but her eyes examined Sarah and Tyler, as if searching for signs of something specific. "Tyler loves playing here in the yard. He found several old little toys buried," commented Sarah, following the strategy they had agreed upon with Harold. "Ah, how interesting. Can you show me what you found?" Tyler ran to get the toys, and Catherine examined them one by one with excessive attention. Sarah noticed the woman paid particular attention to the locations where each item had been found, even jotting down information in a small notebook. "Children have a special intuition for finding lost things," commented Catherine, carefully returning the toys. "Maybe Tyler will find other interesting treasures around here." The comment sounded like encouragement, but Sarah sensed the intention behind it. Catherine was hoping they would find something she hadn't been able to locate on her own. After Catherine left, Sarah and Tyler organized a strategy for the coming days. They would continue exploring the property in a seemingly casual way, but in reality, they would be documenting anything that could be relevant to the case Harold was building. "We're going to be real detectives," said Tyler, excited about the role he was playing. "Very careful detectives," corrected Sarah. "We can't let anyone suspect what we're really doing." Over the following days, they established a routine of systematically exploring the property. Tyler played naturally in the backyard, while Sarah took the opportunity to examine every structure, every mark on the land, every sign that could have historical relevance. During one of these explorations, they found a small stone building half hidden by vegetation in the most distant part of the property. The structure had a locked wooden door, but Tyler found a side window through which they could peek inside. "Mom, there are some shiny things in there," whispered Tyler, pressed against the window. Sarah looked and saw what appeared to be mineral samples organized on shelves. The place clearly served as a kind of laboratory or storage area for materials to be analyzed. There were also what looked like precision scales and measuring instruments. "I think this is where Robert analyzed the samples he collected," murmured Sarah. "That must be how he managed to discover the irregularities." They noted the location of the stone building on their improvised map, but decided not to try to enter without first talking to Harold. The discovery confirmed that Robert had conducted a detailed investigation of the mining company's activities before his departure. That afternoon, as they organized the information they had gathered, they received an unexpected visit. A woman of about 40, well-dressed and with an urban appearance, parked a car in front of the house and approached the door. "Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer. I'm an attorney. May I speak with you about the property you're living in?" The visitor introduced herself. Sarah immediately felt the situation was becoming complicated. The appearance of an attorney couldn't be a coincidence, especially considering recent developments. "Of course, please come in. May I ask who sent you?" said Sarah, leading the woman to the living room. "Actually, I represent the interests of some families in the region who have pending issues related to the old mining company. I heard you recently moved to this property," explained Jennifer, settling on the sofa. Tyler was playing in the backyard, but Sarah could see him through the window. The boy was clearly paying attention to the conversation, probably curious about yet another visit related to the mysteries they had uncovered. "What kind of issues?" asked Sarah, deciding to remain cautious until she understood the attorney's true intentions. "Environmental and labor compensation issues. The mining company caused significant damage to the region and to the families who depended on it. We are working to secure reparations through legal proceedings," explained Jennifer. "And how does that concern us?" "This property is at the center of some of the activities we are investigating. If you find evidence of the company's irregular activities, it could strengthen our case." Sarah felt divided. On one hand, the attorney seemed to be on the same side as Harold in seeking justice for the community. On the other, the timing of the visit made her suspicious. "Do you specifically represent the families from the nearby community?" she asked. "Yes, and we also have an interest in documenting the full history of what happened here. We understand the former supervisor of the mining company may have left important records about the company's operations," said Jennifer, confirming she knew more than she had initially revealed. "How did you know about these records?" "It's known in the region that Robert Sullivan, the supervisor, meticulously documented everything irregular he saw. Several people have confirmed this over the years." The mention of the supervisor's full name made Sarah realize the attorney had done detailed research on the situation. That could be either a positive or negative sign, depending on who really hired her. "And if we found evidence like that, could you guarantee legal protection for us?" asked Sarah, testing the visitor's intentions. "Absolutely. Witnesses in cases like this receive full legal protection. You would have nothing to fear from possible retaliation," assured Jennifer. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Harold, who parked his pickup behind the lawyer's car. Sarah saw through the window that he examined the vehicle's license plate before heading to the house. "Good afternoon," greeted Harold, entering the living room. "I see we have company." "This is Harold, our neighbor," introduced Sarah, "and this is Jennifer, a lawyer representing families in the region." Harold greeted Jennifer politely, but Sarah noticed tension in his posture. There was something about the lawyer's presence that made him uncomfortable. "Jennifer was telling us about compensation lawsuits related to the old mining company," explained Sarah. "Ah, I see. For years we've heard about these legal possibilities," said Harold, keeping a neutral tone. "But no one concrete ever showed up to move the matter forward." "Well, now someone has," replied Jennifer, smiling. "And we are very optimistic about the chances of success, especially if we can get access to the complete documentation of the problems at the mine. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. After Jennifer left, leaving a card with her contact information, Harold appeared clearly worried. "I didn't like that woman at all," he confessed. "Lawyers don't just appear out of nowhere, offering free help to poor communities." "Do you think she's not trustworthy?" asked Sarah. "I think someone sent her here, and the only person with enough interest in this property to hire legal investigation is Catherine," said Harold. The possibility hadn't occurred to Sarah, but it made sense. If Catherine suspected they were finding important evidence, hiring a lawyer to probe the situation would be a smart strategy. "What should we do?" "Carry on as if nothing has changed, but be twice as careful. And don't tell that lawyer anything until we're sure which side she's really on," advised Harold. Tyler, who had overheard part of the conversation, approached with a question that surprised the adults. "Mr. Harold, what if we told the lawyer just a little piece of the truth, to see what she does with the information?" The boy's suggestion was surprisingly shrewd. Testing Jennifer's reactions with controlled information could reveal her true intentions. "Tyler's right," said Harold, smiling. "If she works for Catherine, she'll pass along anything she finds out. If she really works for the community, she'll use the information differently." They agreed that on Jennifer's next visit, Sarah would mention having found some old documents in the house, without specifying what they had actually discovered. The lawyer's reaction would help determine if she was an ally or an adversary. In the following days, they continued their explorations, but with redoubled caution. Tyler suggested they create codes to communicate about their discoveries when other people were around. Sarah was impressed by her son's ability to understand the complexity of the situation. "We could talk about special toys when it's about the important documents," suggested Tyler, "and play places when it's about the hiding spots. The apparent innocence of the childish codes made them perfect for disguising serious conversations." During a visit from Catherine, they tested the system. "Tyler found more special toys yesterday," commented Sarah casually. "What kind of toys?" asked Catherine, immediately interested. "Some old papers he found in the attic. They look like letters or something," said Sarah, inventing a plausible discovery. Catherine tried to hide her interest, but asked to see the old papers Tyler had found. Sarah explained she had thrown them away because they were too dirty, but noticed the evident disappointment on the visitor's face. "Next time you find old papers, please save them for me. I like history, and any document from this property could have sentimental value," requested Catherine. The request confirmed she was definitely looking for specific documentation. Sarah and Tyler exchanged knowing glances, satisfied with the success of their test. A week later, Jennifer returned for a second visit. This time she brought forms and legal documents, appearing more serious in her intentions to represent the family. "I've thought more about our previous conversation," said Sarah. "We actually found some old documents here in the house." "What kind of documents?" asked Jennifer, picking up paper and pen to take notes. "Letters and some reports that seem to be from the mining company era. I haven't examined everything in detail yet," lied Sarah, following the plan they had devised. "Can I take a look at those documents?" "It would be very helpful for our investigation," requested the attorney. "Of course, but I'll need written legal guarantees that our family will be protected if we cooperate with you," demanded Sarah. Jennifer hesitated before answering, a sign she wasn't prepared to provide immediate legal protections. This reinforced Harold's suspicions about her true intentions. "I'll prepare the protection documents and bring them on my next visit," promised Jennifer. "In the meantime, it would be helpful if you made a list of what you found." After the attorney left, Sarah called Harold and reported the conversation. He confirmed that Jennifer was probably working for Catherine, trying to find out if they had discovered important evidence. "Catherine is getting nervous," concluded Harold. "That means we're on the right track." During the following weeks, the tension in the area gradually increased. Catherine began making more frequent visits, always with different excuses about property maintenance or checking on the family's living conditions. Jennifer also returned several times, but never brought the legal protection documents she had promised. Sarah began to notice that other people were also paying attention to the property. Unfamiliar cars passed slowly on the road, and she felt she was being watched when walking with Tyler around the house grounds. "I think it's time to act," said Harold during one of his nighttime visits. "The pressure is mounting, and we can't wait any longer." "What do you suggest?" "I'll contact a trusted attorney in Phoenix, someone who has no ties to the area and can present the evidence to the proper authorities without local interference," explained Harold. "And how long will that take?" "A few weeks to arrange everything, but in the meantime you need to maintain your normal routine and pretend you don't know anything important." The proposal required Sarah and Tyler to continue living in the house while the pressure around them intensified. It was an uncomfortable situation, but she understood that revealing what they knew prematurely could jeopardize the entire process. Tyler, despite his young age, showed surprising maturity in handling the situation. He invented games that served as excuses to watch the movements around the property and developed discreet signals to alert his mother when he noticed something suspicious. "Mom, there's a black car parked on the road for 2 hours, reported Tyler one afternoon, using toy binoculars he had received. Sarah looked out the window and confirmed the vehicle's presence. It was the third time that week that unknown cars remained parked for long periods in the area. "I think they're trying to see if we leave the house to go to the secret place," said Tyler, referring to the underground storage where the evidence was. The boy's observation was sharp. If Catherine suspected they had found something important, watching their movements would be a way to discover where the evidence was hidden. That night, Harold arrived earlier than usual, seeming urgent. "I need to tell you something important," he said, sitting in the living room. "I found out who Patricia really is." "What did you find out?" "She's not an independent attorney. She works for a law firm in Phoenix that represents big mining companies. Catherine hired them to handle possible legal problems related to the inherited property. The revelation confirmed the worst suspicions about Patricia's intentions. Sarah felt a mix of relief for having followed her cautious instincts and anxiety about what this meant for their safety. "So they know we might have found evidence?" she asked. "They know it's a possibility. That's why the pressure has increased. They want to find out what you know before you take the information to the authorities," explained Harold. "And now? Now we speed up our plan. I've already contacted the attorney from Phoenix, and he's coming here next week to examine the evidence. If all goes well, we can present the case to the authorities within a month." The prospect of a near resolution brought relief, but also intensified anxiety about the weeks they would still need to spend maintaining the charade. Tyler, sensing the adults' tension, asked a question that surprised them. "What if we told the truth to some people in the community, so they could help protect us?" The suggestion was risky, but it made sense. If more people knew about the evidence and its importance, it would be harder for Catherine and her allies to intimidate Sarah and Tyler. "It's dangerous," said Harold, "but it might be our best protection." They decided to talk first to Dorothy and Margaret, the neighbors who had welcomed Sarah most kindly. If these women agreed to support the cause, they could help mobilize the rest of the community. The next day, Sarah visited the small community, taking Tyler to play while she talked with the neighbors. Dorothy was watering plants in front of her house, and Margaret was sitting on the porch peeling vegetables. "Can I talk to you about something important?" asked Sarah, joining the women. "Of course, dear, sit here," invited Dorothy, offering a chair in the shade. Sarah briefly told them about the evidence they had discovered, explaining its importance for securing compensation for the families harmed by the mining company. The women listened with growing attention. "I knew Robert had kept that proof," exclaimed Margaret. "I always said he wasn't one to accept injustice quietly." "And you think this can really result in compensation for the community?" asked Dorothy. "The attorney Harold consulted thinks so, But we need to present the evidence the right way through the proper legal channels, explained Sarah. The women immediately offered to help in whatever way was necessary. Dorothy suggested organizing a discreet meeting with the other families in the community to explain the situation and ask for support. If Catherine shows up around here asking questions, we can divert her attention, offered Margaret. A curious woman always finds something to talk about. The neighbors' solidarity strengthened Sarah Mitchell's confidence in the decision she had made. Tyler, playing with other children nearby, seemed more relaxed now that he knew they weren't facing the situation alone. That afternoon, Dorothy organized an informal meeting at her house. Sarah Mitchell and Harold explained the situation to about 15 people, including men and women from the community. The reaction was unanimously supportive. "It's not just about money," said a man named James, who had worked at the mining company for 20 years. "It's about justice. They destroyed our land, and on top of that they stole what they owed us. And about dignity," added an elderly lady. "My husband died working for that company, and we never received anything beyond the miserable salary they paid." The meeting ended with a collaborative protection plan. The community would organize to discreetly monitor the movements of Catherine and her allies, while Sarah Mitchell and Tyler continued their normal routine until the independent attorney arrived. During the following days, the community protection system worked perfectly. Whenever Catherine or Jennifer appeared in the area, an informal communication network alerted Sarah Mitchell to their presence. This allowed her and Tyler to prepare to receive the visits without showing nervousness. "The whole community is on our side," Tyler commented during a walk to the abandoned structures. "It's like we have a big family looking out for us." The boys' observation touched Sarah Mitchell deeply. Since they arrived in the area, they had found not only a house to live in, but a community that welcomed them and became part of their lives. When they reached the underground storage, they found Harold organizing the documents into categorized folders to facilitate the independent attorney's analysis. The detailed work revealed the extent of the documentation Robert Sullivan had managed to gather before his escape. "There's material here to support lawsuits that could last for years," commented Harold. "It's not just about financial compensation. This could result in criminal investigations against those responsible for the company." "And is that good or bad for us?" asked Sarah Mitchell. "It's good for justice. But it means the stakes are much higher than we imagined. That's why Catherine is so desperate to find this evidence." The magnitude of the situation they were involved in began to become clear to Sarah Mitchell. It wasn't just a local dispute over compensation, but a case that could have significant legal repercussions for powerful people. "The attorney from Phoenix arrives tomorrow," Harold informed her. "If he confirms we have a solid case, we can begin legal procedures next week." That night, Catherine made an unannounced visit later than usual. She arrived around 8 o'clock in the evening when Sarah Mitchell was helping Tyler with his homework at the kitchen table. "Sorry to come so late, but I needed to talk to you about something important," said Catherine, appearing more serious than in previous visits. "Of course, come in. Would you like some coffee?" offered Sarah Mitchell, trying to maintain a normal tone. "No, thank you. Actually, I'm here to inform you that it might be necessary for you to move from this house soon," Catherine said directly. The announcement caught Sarah Mitchell by surprise, even though she knew this possibility was real. "Why? Did something happen?" "A commercial interest in the property has arisen. A company wants to lease the area for new mining feasibility studies. If the deal goes through, you'll have to leave," explained Catherine. "And how much time would we have?" "Maybe a month, 2 at most, but I'll help you find another place, don't worry." Tyler was paying attention to the conversation, but kept pretending to do his homework. Sarah noticed her son understood the seriousness of the situation. "Can you give me more details about this company?" asked Sarah. "It's a mineral consulting firm from Phoenix. They want to assess if there's still extraction potential in the region," said Catherine, providing an explanation that sounded rehearsed. After Catherine left, Sarah immediately called Harold to report the conversation. He wasn't surprised by the news. "It was expected. They're trying to force you out before the attorney arrives. But don't worry, we have legal rights that protect you," assured Harold. "What kind of rights?" "You are good faith residents of the property, invited by the owner herself. She can't evict you without legal proceedings, which takes months. Enough time to sort out our situation." The information reassured Sarah, but she sensed the pressure was mounting quickly. Catherine was accelerating her moves, probably because she suspected time was running out to find the evidence on her own. "Should we tell her we already know everything?" asked Tyler during dinner. "Not yet, honey. It's better to wait for the attorney to arrive and guide us on the best way to handle the situation," replied Sarah. The next morning, a car with Phoenix plates parked in front of the house. A man around 50, well-dressed and carrying a briefcase, got out of the vehicle and approached the door. "Good morning. I'm attorney David Anderson. I'm here to meet with Harold about the matter we discussed on the phone." The visitor introduced himself. Harold arrived a few minutes later, and the three gathered in the living room to discuss the legal situation. Attorney David examined some samples of the documents Harold had brought and showed optimism about the case's possibilities. "You have enough evidence to support multiple lines of investigation," said the attorney. "Tax evasion, environmental damage, labor violations. It's a complex case, but very solid." "How long would it take to get concrete results?" asked Sarah. "For direct compensation to the families, perhaps 6 months to a year. For criminal investigations, a few years. But we can get protective orders and injunctions in a matter of weeks," explained Attorney David. The attorney proposed starting immediately with a legal protection process for Sarah and Tyler, ensuring they couldn't be expelled from the property while the case was ongoing. He also suggested measures to protect the evidence from possible interference. "I'll file the first documents today. Within 48 hours, you'll have formal legal protection against any eviction or intimidation attempts," promised Attorney David. While the attorney organized the necessary papers, Tyler asked a question that showed his understanding of the situation. "Attorney David, what if someone tries to hide or destroy the evidence before you can protect it?" "Good question, son. That's why we're going to photograph and digitize everything today. Even if something happens to the originals, we'll have copies with legal value," replied the attorney, impressed by the child's insight. They spent the rest of the day in the underground storage, systematically photographing every document, map, and sample. Attorney David brought professional equipment that ensured adequate quality for the legal use of the copies. "Now, even if they destroy everything, they won't be able to stop the process," said Harold, satisfied with how things were progressing. As they were finishing the documentation work, Tyler warned that there were cars approaching. Through the openings of the abandoned structure, they saw 2 vehicles parking near the entrance, Catherine's car and another they didn't recognize. "They came in greater numbers this time," observed Harold. "They must suspect something has changed." Attorney David Anderson instructed them to remain in the basement until the visitors left. There was no legal risk in being found there, but it would be better to avoid unnecessary confrontations until the legal protections were formalized. Through the sound that reached them, they realized Catherine was conducting a systematic search of the abandoned structure. Voices indicated she had brought at least 3 people to help with the exploration. "They know about this place," whispered Attorney Anderson, "but they don't know about the basement. The entrance is well disguised." After almost an hour, the noises ceased and the cars departed. When they emerged from the hiding place, they found evidence that the location had been thoroughly searched. Catherine was clearly escalating her efforts to find the evidence on her own. "This confirms she knows about the importance of the documents," said Attorney Anderson. "Let's accelerate our legal schedule." On the way back home, they found Catherine waiting on the porch. She appeared with poorly disguised frustration, but tried to maintain a cordial tone. "Hi, everyone. I was waiting for you. We need to talk about the move with more urgency," said Catherine. "Actually, Catherine, we also need to talk with you about a few things," replied Attorney Anderson, introducing himself as the family's lawyer. Catherine's expression changed immediately upon noticing the presence of legal representation. "For what kind of thing?" she asked, clearly uncomfortable. "About this family's legal rights as residents of the property and about some historical discoveries they've made here," said Attorney Anderson, maintaining a professional tone. Catherine requested a private conversation with the attorney, leaving Sarah and Tyler on the porch. Through the open window, they could hear parts of the discussion happening in the living room. "This property has complex legal issues you don't understand," Catherine was saying. "On the contrary, we understand the issues involved perfectly, and we are prepared to handle them through the proper channels," replied Attorney Anderson. The conversation lasted almost an hour, with tones ranging from cordial to tense. When it ended, Catherine left the house visibly upset, while Attorney Anderson appeared satisfied with the outcome. "What happened?" asked Sarah. "I made it clear that you have full legal protection, and that any attempt at pressure or intimidation will be treated as a crime. I also informed her that we have evidence of historical irregularities on the property that will be properly investigated," explained Attorney Anderson. "And how did she react?" "As expected, denied knowledge of any irregularities, claimed absolute property rights, and threatened to sue you for trespassing on private property." "Is that concerning?" "No, they're empty threats from someone trying to intimidate before they lose total control of the situation. Now that we are officially involved, she will have to deal with us through formal legal procedures." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Attorney Anderson remained in the region for 2 more days, finalizing the initial legal procedures and advising Sarah on how to proceed in the coming weeks. He also met with community representatives to explain the processes that would be initiated. "Your case is going to help all the families in the region," he explained to Dorothy and other neighbors. "Compensation will be calculated, considering collective damages, not just individual ones." The prospect of justice for the entire community generated enthusiasm and greater solidarity around Sarah and Tyler. The families organized to ensure nothing would happen to the evidence or the important witnesses. In the following weeks, life in the region changed significantly. Catherine stopped making unannounced visits, but increased pressure through legal intermediaries. Jennifer returned several times, now openly assuming her role as representative of Catherine's interests. "My client is willing to offer generous financial compensation for you to voluntarily relocate," proposed Jennifer during a formal meeting. "What kind of compensation?" asked Attorney David, who had returned to monitor the negotiations. "A house of your own in Silver City, guaranteed employment for Sarah, and a scholarship for Tyler through college," listed Jennifer. The offer was tempting, but Attorney David advised caution before making any decision. "It's an interesting offer, but we need to understand why there's such urgency to get you off the property," he said to Sarah privately. "Do you think they know about more things than we've discovered?" "It's possible. Catherine may be worried about future discoveries beyond the evidence we already have, or perhaps there are other interests in the property she hasn't revealed." The attorney's suspicion proved correct a few weeks later, when Tyler made an accidental discovery that completely changed their understanding of the situation. Playing in the backyard of the house, the boy noticed that one of the floorboards on the porch sounded hollow when stepped on. Curious, he called Sarah to investigate. "Mom, I think there's something under this board," said Tyler, pointing to the spot. Sarah examined the floor and confirmed there was an empty space underneath. Carefully, they managed to lift a few boards and discovered a hidden compartment. Inside the hiding place, they found a metal box containing documents different from those they had discovered in the underground storage. These appeared to be Robert's personal records, including letters to family and detailed instructions about what to do with the evidence he had collected. One of the letters was addressed to whoever finds this information and explained situations they had not yet uncovered. "If you are reading this, it means you managed to decipher the clues my daughter Emily left in the toys. The evidence in the storage is only part of the truth. The mining company not only extracted illegally, but also discovered much larger reserves than they ever publicly admitted. These reserves still exist and are the real reason someone will try to reclaim these lands." The letter continued, explaining that Catherine was not just the heir to the property, but a partner in a new mining company that planned to resume operations in the region using more advanced technologies. "Now I understand why she's so desperate," said Sarah, finishing the letter. "It's not just about evidence from the past. It's about billions in minerals still underground," concluded Tyler, showing an understanding surprising for his age. Sarah immediately called Attorney David to report the discovery. The attorney instructed them to keep the new documents safe and not reveal the discovery to anyone else for the time being. "This completely changes the nature of the case," explained Attorney David. "We're no longer dealing only with compensation for past damages, but with rights to immensely valuable mineral resources. What does this mean for us? It means the risks and opportunities are much greater, but it also means you have much more negotiating power than we imagined. In the following days, Attorney David worked with mineral law experts to determine the community's legal rights over the discovered resources. United States legislation guaranteed that communities affected by mining activities had specific rights to compensation and participation in new projects. Meanwhile, external pressure intensified. Catherine brought a team of attorneys from New York to speed up the eviction process, and men who identified themselves as security consultants but were clearly monitoring the movements of Sarah and Tyler began appearing in the area. The community responded by organizing a 24-hour protection system. There were always at least 2 families on standby for any emergency, and children were instructed to never be home alone. "Now things have gotten really serious," commented Harold during a meeting at Dorothy's house. "When this kind of pressure shows up, it's because the interests are very big." "Do you think we're in danger?" asked Sarah. "Not physical danger," replied Dorothy, "but they'll try everything to make you give up. Tempting offers, legal pressures, psychological intimidation." "We've come too far to give up now," said Margaret. "This is the chance our community has waited for during 15 years. The community's determination strengthened Sarah's resolve to keep fighting. Tyler, in turn, had become a sort of mascot for the movement, with his intelligence and courage inspiring both adults and children. Attorney David Anderson returned with a settlement proposal he had negotiated with other lawyers. "Catherine has agreed to recognize the community's rights to participation in future mining projects in the region, in addition to paying compensation for historical damages. In return, you would agree to allow her to resume operations through a partnership with the community." "What would that mean in practice?" asked Sarah. "The community would receive 30% of the profits from any future mining activity, plus priority in jobs and supply contracts. Catherine would maintain operational control, but with full transparency and community oversight." "And if we refuse?" "Then we would enter a legal battle that could last for years, with an uncertain outcome. The current proposal guarantees immediate benefits and long-term participation. The decision was not Sarah's alone, but belonged to the entire community. An assembly was organized, so all families could discuss and vote on the proposal. The meeting took place in the community's abandoned school, with nearly 100 people in attendance. Attorney David Anderson explained the terms of the agreement in detail, the available legal alternatives, and the implications of each choice. "It's not just about money," said James, one of the community's informal leaders. "It's about ensuring our region is never exploited without our knowledge and participation again." "And about ensuring a better future for our children," added a young mother. "They deserve opportunities we never had." After 4 hours of discussion, the community voted to accept the settlement proposal. The decision was unanimous, demonstrating the trust they had placed in the work of Sarah, Tyler, and Harold. "You've changed our lives," said Dorothy, hugging Sarah after the vote. "You brought hope where there was only resignation." The following months were dedicated to formalizing the agreement and starting controlled exploration operations. Catherine had to accept levels of transparency she never imagined, but acknowledged that the partnership was better than a prolonged legal battle. Sarah was invited to coordinate the community's participation in the project, receiving training in resource management and environmental oversight. Tyler became a symbol of new educational opportunities, participating in a special teaching program that prepared local children for future skilled jobs in responsible mining. "I never imagined that accepting to live in a house nobody wanted could change our lives so much," reflected Sarah during a conversation with Harold. "Sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as difficulties," he replied. "You had the courage to investigate what others preferred to ignore." The isolated house at the mine was renovated and transformed into a training and education center for the community. The place that symbolized abandonment became a nucleus of renewal and hope. Tyler, now 9 years old, led groups of children on educational visits to the mining operations, explaining the importance of transparency and community participation. His maturity and knowledge impressed adult visitors who came to see the project. Tyler has become a little leader, commented attorney David Anderson during a follow-up visit. "He understands better than many adults the importance of what you've achieved here." 6 months after the agreement was signed, the first profit distribution was carried out. Each family in the community received an amount that represented more money than most had seen in entire years of work. But beyond the financial benefits, the most significant transformation was in the community's self-esteem and future outlook. Local infrastructure improvement projects were started, including renovating the school, expanding the health clinic, and paving the main access roads. "We didn't just change houses," said Sarah during an interview with a local newspaper covering the story. "We changed lives and helped an entire community change too." The story of Sarah and Tyler spread throughout the region, inspiring other communities to investigate possible irregularities in extractive activities in their areas. Attorney David began to be regularly sought out by groups wanting to replicate the community participation model. Catherine, after the initial period of resistance, publicly acknowledged that the partnership had resulted in more efficient and sustainable operations. The transparency demanded by the community had eliminated waste and improved activity planning. "I learned that working with the community, not against it, produces better results for everyone," Catherine admitted during a ceremony inaugurating new equipment. 1 year after arriving at the isolated house, Sarah and Tyler organized a party to celebrate all the transformations that had occurred. The celebration brought together hundreds of people, including families from other regions who were implementing similar projects. "Thank you, Emily," whispered Tyler near the swing in the backyard, referring to the girl who had left the clues in the buried toys. "Your clues helped a lot of people." Sarah watched her son swinging on the same structure where another child had played years before, and felt the circle had been completed. The suffering and secrets of the past had transformed into hope and opportunities for the future. "And now, my love, what do we do when the mystery is solved and the adventure is over?" she asked, sitting on the bench near the swing. "We live our new life," replied Tyler with the wisdom of someone who had matured greatly in just a few months, "and we help other people when they need detectives." The answer brought a smile to Sarah's face. Tyler had found his calling, and she had found her place in the world. The house that nobody wanted had become the home where two people discovered purposes they never imagined having. 2 years later, the region became a national model for participatory mining. Universities sent students to study the project, and international organizations cited the experience as an example of sustainable development. Sarah Mitchell completed environmental management courses and became a recognized expert in community participation in extractive projects. Tyler, now 10 years old, corresponded with children from various parts of the United States, teaching the importance of asking questions and investigating situations that adults accepted as normal. "You turned a story of injustice into a story of hope," said attorney David Anderson during a lecture he gave about the case. "You proved that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary changes when they have courage and determination." The isolated house at the mining site remained the center of activities for the region, but it was now surrounded by other buildings, administrative offices, training rooms, and residences for the families who worked directly on the project. During the evenings, when the day's activities ended, Sarah and Tyler still sat on the porch of the original house, watching the movement around them that they had helped create. "Mom, do you think Emily would be happy if she knew what happened here?" Tyler asked one night, watching the lights that now illuminated the entire area. "I'm sure she would, sweetheart. She left clues hoping that someone would one day find them and do something with them. You did exactly what she hoped. And her father, Robert. I think he would be proud to know that the evidence he collected finally resulted in justice for the families of the region." 3 years after the initial discovery, Sarah received a letter that moved her deeply. It was from Robert Sullivan, the former supervisor, writing from his new home in another state. "Dear Sarah and Tyler, I heard through acquaintances about everything that happened in the region after you found the evidence I kept. You can't imagine the happiness I feel, knowing that our sacrifices resulted in something positive for the community. My family is well and safe." Emily, now 16, was moved to learn that her clues were found and understood. She always said that someday a smart child like Tyler would find the toys and discover what they meant. Thank you for having the courage to investigate what others preferred to ignore. You achieved the justice I didn't have the strength to seek at the time. With admiration and gratitude, Robert, Linda, Emily, and Brian Sullivan. The letter was read at a community assembly, moving all the families present. It was confirmation that they had honored the trust Robert had placed in his evidence. Now the story is complete, said Dorothy, wiping away tears. The circle has closed and everyone came out winning. In the following years, Sarah and Tyler maintained regular correspondence with the Sullivan family. Emily sent a photo of her high school graduation, and Brian, the younger brother, started college for environmental engineering, inspired by the story his parents told about the region of origin. The mining project continued to grow and evolve, always maintaining the principles of transparency and community participation that had been established in the initial agreement. Other companies in the region adopted similar models, creating a virtuous cycle of responsible development. Tyler, at 12 years old, won a National Young Citizen Award for his contribution to the social transformation of the region. During the award ceremony in Washington, D.C., he dedicated the recognition to all children who have the courage to ask questions when adults prefer to accept unjust situations. Sometimes the solution to big problems is in the small things we find by chance, Tyler said during his acceptance speech. The important thing is not to be afraid to investigate and to ask for help when you need it. Sarah, watching from the audience, felt immense pride for the boy she had raised. The journey that began with desperation for housing had transformed into a life mission that benefited hundreds of people. 5 years after arriving at the isolated house, Sarah and Tyler organized a special meeting to mark the anniversary of the discovery of the first evidence. The celebration brought together not only the local community, but also representatives from other regions who had replicated the participation model. "You created more than a successful project," said the federal government representative present at the ceremony. "You created a movement that is transforming the relationship between extractive companies and communities across the country." During the party, Sarah found a moment to sit alone on the porch of the original house, reflecting on everything that had happened. Tyler found her there and joined her on the bench. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" "I was thinking about how our life changed since we arrived here, and about how sometimes the best things start in the most difficult moments. Do you think we would have discovered all this if we hadn't been evicted from the apartment?" "Probably not. Sometimes we need to lose what we have to find what we truly need. And do you think our mission here is over?" Sarah looked around, observing the constant movement of people working, studying, and building a better future for the region. "I think our mission has changed. Now it's about keeping alive everything we managed to build and helping other people who need courage to investigate their own situations." Tyler nodded in agreement, already mentally planning the next letters he would write to children from other regions who had asked for advice on how to deal with problems in their communities. Night fell over the region that had been completely transformed, but the house where it all began remained lit, a symbol that persistence and courage can turn stories of abandonment into stories of hope. 10 years later, when Tyler was finishing high school and preparing to study law with a specialization in community issues, Sarah received an invitation to speak at an international conference on sustainable development. "It's going to be strange telling our story to people from all over the world," commented Tyler, helping his mother prepare the presentation. "Our story stopped being just ours a long time ago," Sarah replied. "Now it belongs to all the people who need inspiration to not give up fighting for justice." The lecture was a success, and Sarah received dozens of invitations to visit similar projects in other countries. She accepted some, always accompanied by Tyler, spreading the message that social transformation begins with ordinary people who have the courage to question seemingly unchangeable situations. "You proved that there are no dreams too small or people too ordinary to promote extraordinary change," said the conference moderator during the conclusion of the lecture. Back in the United States, Sarah and Tyler found the region even more prosperous and organized. The local school had become a national reference in education focused on community development, and young people from various parts of the country came to study there. "Our house has become a tourist spot," joked Tyler, watching a group of college students photographing the porch where they had discovered the first hidden documents. "It's good that people see that real change is possible," Sarah replied, "especially at a time when so many people feel hopeless." The story of Sarah and Tyler had become a legend in the region, but they maintained the humility of those who knew they had only been catalysts for a transformation that was only possible thanks to the collective effort of the entire community. 15 years after their initial arrival, as Tyler was graduating from law school and Sarah had become an international consultant in community development, they organized one last grand celebration at the isolated house. "It's our way of saying thank you," Sarah explained to the hundreds of guests present, "for believing that two people who arrived here with nothing could help build something great." During the party, a special surprise awaited them. Robert, Linda, Emily, and Brian Sullivan appeared unexpectedly, traveling from afar to join the celebration. 15 years later, we can finally come home," said Robert, moved to see the transformation of the region. "You did what I didn't have the courage to do back then." "We just continued what you started," replied Tyler, now an 18-year-old young man with the maturity of someone who had been part of social transformations since childhood. The reunion with the Sullivan family symbolically completed the cycle of the story. The people who had planted the seeds of justice could see the fruits their courage had produced decades later. "Emily, thank you for the clues," Tyler said to the 24-year-old who had become a lawyer specializing in environmental rights. "They changed our lives and the lives of so many others. I always knew that someday a smart kid like you would find the toys and understand what they meant," Emily replied, smiling. "Dad always said the truth would come out one day." The party lasted into the night, with music, dancing, and stories being shared among generations who had taken part in transforming the region. Children born after the changes listened, fascinated to tales of the difficult times before. "It sounds like a movie story," commented a 10-year-old girl. "I wonder what it's like to find buried treasures and help everyone." "You don't have to wonder," Tyler replied. "You can create your own story of transformation. You just need the courage to investigate things that seem wrong around you." When the party ended and the last guests departed, Sarah and Tyler were alone on the porch of the house where it all began. The silence of the night contrasted with the bustle that had filled the property during the day. "And now?" asked Tyler, repeating the question he had asked years before when they were just a desperate mother and a curious child. "Now we keep living and helping other people discover they can also transform their realities," Sarah replied, feeling a deep peace as she looked at the illuminated region around them. "Do you think we'll miss this phase of our lives?" "I think we'll carry this phase with us forever, wherever life takes us. But I also think our best days are still ahead." Tyler smiled and stood up, walking to the swing that still hung from the tree in the backyard. At 18, he was too big for the toy, but he sat down anyway, swinging gently as he looked at the stars. "Mom, thank you for having the courage to agree to live in the house nobody wanted," he said. "Thank you for being curious enough to investigate the mysteries you found here," Sarah replied. They stayed silent for a few minutes, each lost in their own reflections on the extraordinary journey they had shared. The isolated house at the mine was no longer isolated, and what Sarah had found there had surpassed any expectation she could have had on that first night of uncertainty. The story that began with despair and need had transformed into a saga of courage, discovery, and social transformation that inspired people across the country. But for Sarah and Tyler, the greatest discovery had been the ability of two ordinary people to change not only their own lives, but the lives of an entire community. When they finally entered the house to sleep, Sarah paused for a moment at the door, looking back one last time. Tomorrow would be a new day with new challenges and new opportunities to make a difference in the world. "Good night, house," she whispered, thanking the place that had given them not just shelter, but purpose and community. "Good night, mysteries," added Tyler, waving toward the backyard where it had all begun with toys buried by a girl who trusted that someone would one day find her clues. The house that nobody wanted had become the home where two people discovered they had more strength and capability than they ever imagined, and where an entire community learned that justice and transformation are possible when ordinary people have extraordinary courage. End of story. So what did you think of this moving story? Did Sarah make the right decision in investigating the mysteries of the isolated house? Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and share your opinion on the courage of this mother and son. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one.